Hi all, me again. 3 weeks in a row at the top of the show, it must be CitizenCon travel season. Now with our last 2 episodes devoted entirely to game-altering healing and inventory changes coming online in the upcoming Alpha 3.15, we thought we'd spend this week looking even further ahead with an episode I like to call, Oops, All Sprint Report. At least that's what I'm going to call it until I can figure out a word that rhymes with report. The season is rhyming titles. I don't know if you've noticed it. Anyway, let's get to it. Starting things off this week, let's go with the EU-PU feature team. Now, as part of their work on loot generation, the EU-PU FT has been working on a variety of locked crates for players to discover throughout the persistent universe, like some that would require use of a cutting tool to open, or in this case, combination lock you'll have to secure the solution for elsewhere in your travels. 1, 2, 3, 4. Amanda, remind me to change the combination on my luggage. The same team has been working on laser trip mines, feature requested by our turbulent team in Montreal to help make the exploration of derelicts throughout the verse just a little more exciting and dangerous than ever before. One of the big things to work out, besides proximity detonations, was to properly physicalize any of the items being used to detonate them, like these boxes, so that they react to the force of the explosions themselves. Now these crates are currently at a high health value for testing, but you can expect them to be tuned just a little bit, so they too will be damaged or destroyed when used in this manner. And then of course, when physicalized damage comes online later down the road, the lifespan of these crates will simply be determined by things like material makeup and construction type. While this test level is designed just to play with a multitude of ways for disposing of mines, this is also a pre-VFX pass, so you can expect things like the lasers and effects you're witnessing to continue to evolve beyond what you're seeing here. And because the team is smart and has played online video games before, they're also experimenting with the potential of Rube Goldberg chain reactions that will inevitably be created by players. Because why kill someone with a single explosion when you can use 7? That's what Grandma always said. Checking in with the UI team, they've recently completed a sprint converting the ASOP terminals we all know and tolerate from their original Flash implementations to everyone's favorite building blocks. Now while the overall look here may appear similar at this moment, this switchover will not only allow us to improve the styling and functionality of it going forward, but also make it much easier to fix many of the bugs that have plagued ASOP over the years. Also, it'll just run faster in building blocks instead of Flash, and when it comes to performance in a game this big, every win counts. In other screen news, a smaller task completed recently was the addition of disconnection screens for a variety of monitors throughout Squadron 42 and the persistent universe. Now while many screens already have a variety of states such as on and off, damaged or disconnected, when that signal was disconnected previously, they just kinda appeared no different than the off state. Sure, it's a small thing, but just like the performance gains replacing Flash, these smaller interaction states are what often add up to make a universe that behaves and feels as players expect them to. And that's called immersion. Go ahead and drink. Next up, the UI team also completed a first pass at some of the interfaces for EU-PU's upcoming mining gadgets, items we've discussed previously that can be placed directly onto the bigger or more formidable asteroids that will allow players to tackle the mineable foes they otherwise may not be able to, or to simply improve the results on others they can. They're also a neat example of some of the ways the style sheet functionality of building blocks can make similar interfaces look different depending on the manufacturer. Keep an eye on the public roadmap for when mining gadgets will make their way into the persistent universe. Moving on over to characters, if you've ventured throughout the persistent universe, I'm sure that you've noticed the growing amount of branded locations popping up here and there, but with the employees wearing seemingly random outfits. Well, the time on the sprint wheel has come to begin early look dev on branded uniforms for those NPCs you encounter. The idea here is to create a series of modular options where the color palette and logo can be easily swapped from place to place, or even unlogoed to be used for random food carts, or maybe even the surgeons and Grimhex. You know those folks don't have certifications, right? Ian, I'm begging. Please let me walk into a hospital in Grimhex and see a dude with a bloody whammer's apron on doing work. I don't ask for a lot. Sometimes I do. The character team has also been developing a system for what we call Theta Geo, which is additive geometry that only appears when one or more items in a set are combined on the player. It's like the reverse of zone culling, which some of you might remember hides the puffy shirts from clipping through and appearing outside of the slim jacket you wear on top of it. What Theta Geo allows us to do is to maintain modularity that allows you to wear almost any helmet with any chest or arms or legs you want, but add a specific visual flair when you choose to wear armor or clothing of the same thematic set. Now you can see here a player character already wearing the upcoming RRS Light Specialist helmet while equipping a non-matching torso. This works as normal. Helmet from one set, torso from another. But when the player equips the matching RRS torso found in box number 2, the additive cowl that's part of the helmet is now displayed. It's tech like this that will serve to unlock our character artists to go bigger and bolder in their designs than ever before. And speaking of the new RRS Light Specialist armor, let's go ahead and take a look at it in action. If you want to learn more about the new RSS Light Specialist armor, you might want to check out the new Digital CitizenCon webpage that goes live tomorrow. Hint, hint. Meanwhile, the vehicle experience team has been working on several features, including bombing, which we'll discuss next week and beyond. But here's a fun look at progress on the new eject cam. Whee! And a look at the ongoing progress of integrating actor status intoxication effects into vehicle operation, such as applying them to the player's control of their spaceship. Now in the debug text you can see in the upper left, the raw reading is what the player is actually doing with their controls. And for these demonstration purposes, that's not much or barely anything at all. But the number to the left of that is the actual values being applied by your player character to the ship by their sluggish and imprecise reflexes. Yeah, don't drink and fly, my friends. But definitely do walk up behind your pilot in a Hercules or a Constellation and shoot that new healing drug ray of yours at the back of their head for some real happy fun times. Tell them Disco sent you. And if intoxication and atmosphere isn't enough, here it is in space, and in ground vehicles, and finally even in turrets, where some of us can still work pretty well like this. Hi, Steve Bender. Flying along, as Ship Showdown barrels towards its thrilling conclusion, and y'all already destroyed my bracket this year, so viva la Argo Cargo, I say. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the ships that will no doubt be competing in next year's event, like the Aegis Starfighter, where the team has recently completed a sprint detailing out all of the component bays, making certain they're all labeled and animated correctly. As well as completing a pass on the landing gear that makes them feel appropriately super chunky and stout, in the words of the inimitable Ben Curtis. Of course, what you really want to see is this look at the final art stage exterior for both the Ares Ion and the Ares Inferno. And you know what? This is still work in progress. Are Crusader ships the best looking ships? Let's go for an all Crusader Final Four in next year's Ship Showdown. Because that means John Crew has to make my Genesis. Please. Work also continues on the Aegis Redeemer, which was recently the first recipient of a new developmental work on the glow shader, which previously didn't allow artists to turn them off when they wanted. This tended to limit the place and manner in which they could be used on ships. That's important because glows like this are made at the vehicle material layer. And while there will still be VFX layered on top of them in the final product, these underlying material glows can save on VFX particle budget when appropriate, and that means artists can use them in new ways and places where we don't necessarily want something to appear on at all the times, and maybe get some VFX performance gains along the way. Special shout out to Rob Dickinson for his work here. On the Redeemer's inside, the team continues to work on final polish all around while building their work list for final tweaks before it's go time. The team also spent a little bit of time experimenting with adding some motion aspects into the interior, but, well, let's just say some people like it, and some people don't. And we're still going to play with it, but don't be surprised if it doesn't make it into final release. A big part of development is experimentation, and it will remain to be seen if some version of Steampunk Choo Choo survives until the finish line. The EU Vehicle Content team is also making their way through Greybox on the Drake Vulture, the entry-level salvage ship intending to make its way into the persistent universe next year. Now, Greybox is mostly about experimenting with detail, either adding it to the places that work, or removing it from where it tends to get too busy, all while laying the groundwork for final art phase to begin soon after. Looking good, Vulture. From final art to Greybox, let's go back to Whitebox, where I'm proud to announce work has begun on building out the Hull A, entry-level variant of the famed Hull C from Musashi Industrial and Starflight Concern. Now in Whitebox phase, this process began by importing the recently revised 3D concept mesh into Engine and ensuring that it itself is functional. Now you might be saying, recently revised concept? Yeah, some minor changes had to be made because player and ship metrics have evolved quite a bit since it was first introduced, and important studies have shown players like to fit inside their spaceships. On the inside, in its collapsed state, it's looking very similar to the size of the Prospector players are already familiar with, complete with a cockpit in front, a component area just behind, an airlock, and then habitation in the rear of the front half. And as Whitebox work continues, the team will be evaluating space for the various components, as well as a potential reduction in CST. That's cockpit struck thickness, a malady that can strike any MISC or RSI ship at a moment's notice. And one Origin ship, but we fixed that. There's also a re-examination of bathroom space going on, as AI NPC passengers need just a little more room to do things than players. Yeah, eventually pooping AI will be on the roadmap. You can bug Jake Bradley for the win. Whitebox phase is also where we test things like landing gear position so the ship doesn't fall over, which is extra special important with the Hull A because of its expanding and contracting substructure, where timings are being adjusted, and especially the clearances, because the Hull A is intended to successfully make landing both collapsed and with its cargo racks fully extended and filled. But Disco, what about my Hull C? Well, the team has also brought the original beast out of the mothballs it's been sitting in for a while and begun to update it to modern vehicle art standards, including an updated thruster trim sheet, Nice. New headlights up front. Nice. And crucially, upgrading the materials all over with the recent hard surface shader in a comparison you can see here. May we never speak of the Ilum shader ever again. They've also gone back and added VTOL thrusters, missing from when the ship was last worked on, because while it won't be able to land fully laden like its Hull A little sibling, you can still expect to do so in its collapsed state. Inside the ship, work continues making many of the same types of upgrades to materials, signage, and general scale, including cutaways for many of the new components that have been developed since the Hull C was last worked on. Finally, Olisar is moving, but only a little bit. Now that Crusader is fully integrated into the Stanton system, Olisar kinda stood out because it was the only major planetary station not in geosynchronous orbit over its landing zone, so it's being moved over to the left a little. And the views have never been better. So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that exploring derelicts are about to become a lot more interesting and dangerous with the addition of laser trip mines. That Theta Geo will unlock the maximum potential of this already talented and amazing character art team. That you probably really shouldn't drink and fly. And that work on the upcoming cargo refactor means that it's finally time to turn the Eye of Development Sauron back to the Hull series. Don't forget Digital Citizen Gun is coming up on October 9th, and I'm not allowed to tell you what's in it, so just look at my face. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckaby. We'll see you all next week.